Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was easily one of the most hyped games of all time for me, and as a fan of the original and then remake, I didn't know what to expect, but Rebirth totally blew all my expectations out of the water and then some. But that's not to say that I didn't love everything about this game. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the best and worst parts of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and let's break down that controversial ending that I really haven't had a chance to talk about yet. So as always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Over 90% of people that watch this channel are not subscribed, so hit that subscribe button because it does make a difference for the smaller content creators like me, and leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the video and some of my theories that I have along the way. Let's go. Now, just for some context, I finished this game in 32 hours playing story only. No side quests, no anything additional. I wanted to finish this game as fast as possible to avoid spoilers. Now, I did get to the credits mostly unscathed. Somebody did spoil one of the twists or turns in my YouTube comments, which was really unfortunate. So just a reminder, if you have not finished this game or you don't want anything spoiled, please do not watch this video unless you've finished the game or you just don't care about spoilers. So let's talk about the story. Immediately, the game opens up with Zack and Zack's perspective. This was one of the highlight points for me. I loved seeing Zack again. After Zack being confirmed alive was teased, I just could not wait to see more, and I think what they did do with Zack and Zack's story was handled really well. I do wish we could have gotten more combat sections with Zack, but I suppose in the third part, we will inevitably get more of that, so I'm really hanging on for that. And speaking of hanging on, I could not wait to see more of what was going to happen with Zack and how he was going to get out of this alternate reality that he ended up being in. You know, Zack is in a different timeline, and as we see through the game's progression, Zack is actually skipping through different realities or different timelines or different branching paths. It can be a little bit convoluted at some points, but I think it's mostly easy to follow. And with the resolution of Zack actually floating through the live stream and teaming up with Cloud to fight Sephiroth was easily the most amazing moment of this entire game for me. And as a Zack fan, a Crisis Core fan, this is so great, and I can't wait for Zack to be back officially. And I hope he teams up with Cloud and the rest of the gang in the third game. Now, aside from Zack, in terms of story, I think the game really gave context and a lot of clarity and really expanded on everything that was in the original game. From character personalities to the world, even side characters and NPCs, even the dialogue in towns, there's just a lot of life in this world. And in my opinion, if you're going to remake a game, this is how to do it. This is the blueprint for doing that. Most of the story beats are kind of the same. You know, there are some different branching things and branching paths that you can go on, but more or less the story is pretty much one-to-one in terms of the major events. Now, I'm going to discuss my thoughts on the ending and all the twists and turns towards the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. If I'm just thinking of some story points off the top of my head that really stuck out for me, it was Red 13 or Nanaki's homecoming to Cosmo Canyon, and the way that they expanded on the Gi tribe being involved in his father's death or Seto's death. It really added a lot of depth to that sequence. And then even after that, expanding on the Gi and their place in the world, and they can't actually die. They can't go pass on. This is why they created the black materia. That wasn't in the original game. That was really cool, and that was a really welcome surprise to the game. Another scene that I really thought that was stand out was one that I was really looking forward to, which was Barrett and Dyne and how that was going to be handled. It was just as emotional as the original one, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of people online discuss that it kind of fell short. It wasn't as well set up, and yes, that could be argued, but I think with the voice acting specifically, that really brought that sequence home to me, and I love that. I was bawling my eyes out the entire time. It was a great and very emotional scene. But yeah, to summarize my thoughts on the story, aside from those kind of major sticking points, I mean, there's so much I could discuss, but that's just what came to mind. It really follows the original game to a T and fleshes it out in a way that really I feel satisfied as a fan of the game, and even those who weren't fans of the original, I think they can follow this and feel very satisfied with the entirety of the story. I did have a Breath of the Wild moment, and I think a lot of people will as well, with how the game actually plays. Once you leave Calm and you open those doors into the grasslands and Calm, it's kind of like an aha moment, like, okay, I get what they're going for now. It took me a little bit to get used to it, but I totally embraced the open worldness of it straight away. I've seen a lot of people complain online about the Ubisoftness of this map and how it's really bloated and padded with exploring and getting the different towers and the chocobo stops and all of that. And that's, look, I get that to a point, but at the same time, this is a massive world, and and we really have to appreciate what the devs did in such a short amount of time, considering this was developed over the last 3 or 4 years now. This game is huge, and there's a lot of seamlessness in this entire world. You can traverse from one end of the map to the other in about under an hour or so. It's very seamless, and considering this game is all running natively on the PS5 with no additional stuff or any additional cutscenes or whatever, everything's all in engine except for the CGI sequences, of course. This game is really just amazing in terms of scale. And like I said, I didn't do all of the side stuff straight away in my first playthrough, but now I'm going back in and doing all the towers and doing all the side quests and finding all the life stream or the life spring stuff. And I did go back and do all the proto relic stuff, which is really great, and a massive fan service as well if you are a Final Fantasy fan like I am. Seeing Gilgamesh, who debuted in Final Fantasy V with the Excalibur and all that stuff and timeline jumping, it's major fan service here. You can tell that the people who are making this game are Final Fantasy fans themselves, because there's a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of things present in the world for you to pick up on. But yeah, the map is huge. The worlds are huge. They're broken up into different zones essentially, and there's a lot to explore, and it's very easy to feel overwhelmed. So that could be a negative point for some people, but me, I didn't mind it. Towards the end, I did feel like it was a little bit tedious just because I wanted to get to that story point, that next story beat, purely because I was playing this game my way in an attempt to not be spoiled. I've seen a lot of people online complain about Gungaga burnout. That's really hard to find things there. It's really hard to get to places in Cosmo Canyon. I get that. I think that's a matter of mileage may vary depending on who you are and what your kind of preferred play styles are. But overall, I think that world size was huge. The exploration was okay. And the thing to remember about all this stuff, and including what I'm about to speak on here too, is a lot of this is optional. You do not have to play any of this at all. All of this is not in your face. I mean, it's in your face in a way where it's like, hey, you can do this if you want, but you don't actually have to do this if you don't want to do it, because it's not required. And I think that level of flexibility is really great. But if you do dig deeper into the game, there's so much stuff there. And that's not just speaking to world exploring. We can talk about the mini games as well. There are so many mini games in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And there's a few games that I didn't like, and let's talk about those first. I didn't like the 3D brawler game because it was kind of hard to get around, and it's a shame because it's such a beautiful looking mini game. I love the polygonalness of it. That's really cool. The motorbike game was cool, but I think it's, we've been there, done that. A lot of the additional stuff here was really fun. I loved Queen's Blood. Queen's Blood really surprised me. I didn't like it at first, and I think that's on me because I didn't take the time to understand the game. But after I beat the main game, I wanted to go back and try and get into it and try and figure out how Queen's Blood actually works. So I managed to get through the entire story of Queen's Blood all the way up to the highest rank that you can get, and getting the ultimate cards and fighting the final Queen's Blood boss. The one thing I will say about Queen's Blood is it plays pretty much the same from every match up until the second to last one. You can use most of your cards, you can use most of the same deck, but once you get to that final Queen's Blood battle, everything changes. And if you've played every match of Queen's Blood, including the final one, you know what I'm talking about. Everything changes. The way that you think about Queen's Blood, you have to just unthink it and unlearn it, and most likely try and find a guide or a recommended set of cards in order to get past it. But overall, I thought that was really fun. I want more of Queen's Blood, to the point where I would actually be happy to ask Square to put together like a Queen's Blood app for the iPhone or something like that. That would be really dangerous, and my screen time would probably triple on my phone. Very dangerous, but very fun. Gears and Gambits was one that I actually didn't really care for, and that appears in the Cosmo Canyon region when you're trying to do that Proto Relic quest. I didn't really care for that. That felt like a kind of dumbed down version or a management sim that was kind of parallel to Fort Condor, which is okay, but I much preferred a playstyle like Fort Condor. Funnily enough, I actually didn't care for the piano performance mini games. It's really weird because as a musician, I think this sounds very pompous as a musician, but as somebody who actually plays music, I find like games like Guitar Hero or any music sims actually really clunky and almost counterintuitive to how I would play the instrument. So it's funny because I'm playing this and I'm like, I know how to play some of these songs like physically, like in real life, but I'm just stumbling as I try and play like Aerith's theme or Tifa's theme on the piano. But you know what? If you like that, all good for you. One of the new Golden Saucer ones, Galactic Saviors, was really fun. I really liked that as well. That was that was one of the highlights for me. I mean, again, there's so many mini games here, and some of them just didn't stick. But you know what? That's okay. And a lot of people will argue that this is just the devs padding out the game because they want to try and maximize the disk space here so they can squeeze out a third game. I don't think that's really the case. And you know what? Fair enough if that's what you think. But there's just a lot of content here, and we're very lucky as players and Final Fantasy fans specifically to have the opportunity to enjoy this game. Here's some stuff that I actually really just outright didn't like. I didn't like the Cait Sith Shinra Manor sneaking missions. Yeah, it was hard. I didn't like that they needed to reinvent how you aim and throw boxes. That was just kind of annoying. I mean, Cait Sith isn't my favorite character in Final Fantasy VII. You know, it's just one way for them to, I suppose, pad out that area, because every character has their own play style when you do play as them on their own kind of side missions or whatever in the context of the main story. Speaking of that, the Temple of the Ancients was awesome and epic in terms of scale, but I just felt like that just kind of dragged on forever. And maybe that's just me, because, you know, that's almost the final chapter and I just want to get to that, you know, main payoff at the end of the game. So I just couldn't wait to finish that as soon as possible. I do wish Vincent and Cid were playable. I kind of missed, you know, Rocket Town. I wanted to know a little bit more about Cid in context of the game. Yes, there's a lot there that could be fleshed out in the third game. Same thing with Vincent. We do get a little bit of Vincent with the boss battle that we have at the basement of the Shinra Manor. That was really cool and very unexpected. So that's not necessarily a negative point on the game. It's just like, I can't wait to see what's next in part 3. One of the other things that I just outright didn't like was some of the VR missions, specifically the summons. I just think it would have been cool to, you know, examine all of their data through the different regions and then actually fight them in context of the world map, rather than going to Chadley and then having to fight them in this virtual reality stuff. I think that's a missed opportunity to not have a unique environment for each summon. And also, hard mode is just a little bit too hard. I think the best way to experience the challenge of the game is to actually play on dynamic, which kind of scales the difficulty of the enemies to your level. And I mean, of course, you're going to plow through everything on easy difficulty and maybe a little bit on normal, but dynamic, I think, is the best way to experience the story of the game and have a little bit of challenge as you go as well. I also want to say that, you know what, I actually don't really mind Chadley. A lot of people find him to be really annoying, and he just sometimes comes out of nowhere. They associate not liking Chadley because he tells you to go check out the entirety of the world map and explore things and find some intel. You know, he's actually not that bad. I don't mind it. And to be honest with you, I think Chadley might have some sort of importance to the third game. Maybe he's going to be like a secret final boss. He's going to turn all that intel that we've sent him over the last 2 games and turn into some massive super boss. Was kind of teased that Hojo was experimenting on Chadley, or Chadley is one of Hojo's experiments in the Nebel region doing the Proto Relic side quest. I mean, that was kind of shown, so I don't think Chadley deserves the disrespect that he gets online. Okay, on to some more positive things. The music in this game is absolutely standout. I really love how the composers tapped into the original stuff, the original compositions, and just totally amplified them. A lot of the new tracks here are just as good as the original stuff, and everything fits together very seamlessly. One great highlight for those who are listening a little bit more intently is it sounds like they're using some of the similar sounds or samples or whatever from the PlayStation 1 MIDI sounds. So you'll find that some of the keys or some of the different synths or whatever are like one-to-one copies, or if not the same thing, from the PlayStation 1 days. So a lot of motifs that you hear throughout the game sound like Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 1, and I think that's very well intentional. And I think it's important to point out the intentionalness of everything in this entire game. All that stuff is there for a reason. And now one last thing here before we get into maybe my thoughts on the ending, I suppose, was Cloud's love interest. I like how you can play it one of either 2 ways. You can either court Aerith and get your relationship up with Aerith, so that way you can have the gold saucer date on chapter 12, or you can court Tifa and get your relationship up with Tifa. So actually, the only thing that I did in terms of following a guide for my playthrough of Rebirth was the right choices, dialogue choices that you can make with Tifa, so that way you can get your relationship up and then have that date scene at Golden Saucer, which I am a massive Cloud and Tifa fan. I actually put a post out on Twitter the other day, and that kind of blew up. I didn't really realize that, you know, there was a lot of fangirlness for those as a couple, but hey, I'm happy to be part of that club. And the payoff that you get as well with that date scene, especially if you have the highest intimacy ranking, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I just had chills. I love love, and I love Cloud's and Tifa's love. I just think that's great. I'm here for it, and I loved it. And I love that the game catered to that. Okay, now that we have that other stuff out of the way, I want to talk about the ending. This ending left me disappointed when I first played it, and I think this was done on purpose. I think the devs kept that ending there mostly in place in an attempt to leave players confused and defeated, because that's what happens in the game. Now, I'll be the first to admit here that there's a lot that I don't understand, and there's a lot that goes over my head. I know there's the Genova interference. I know that there's the interference with Aerith trying to guide Cloud in a certain direction. Then you have Sephiroth. There's a lot there, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around that, even now 2 weeks removed from me finishing the game. I haven't seen any other videos on it. I haven't read anything else. So this is just purely my take on it. I could be wrong. I could be right. I don't know. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. But when Cloud actually goes to Aerith and he's, has these whispers around him that are trying to get him to strike Aerith down, he comes to his senses, and then Sephiroth is coming down, and then for a second there, we see Cloud deflect Sephiroth's sword, and I was like, oh my gosh, we've done it. This is it. This is the major twist. That person who left the comment on my YouTube video was wrong. And then that moment was very quickly taken away from you as the player. And Cloud is seeing so many different things, and of course, that's the point where I feel the game really confirms the multiple timeline thing. And, I suppose prior to that, there's the Cloud and Aerith date scene where we see the sky that's, looking a little bit torn. Things aren't quite right. And what I'm led to believe is that there are multiple timelines. And of course, we kind of knew that with the ending where Zack was confirmed. We saw the Terrier stamp blow in the wind. And now, throughout the course of the game, we're seeing different stamps as time progresses. And I think that's the devs really driving home the fact that there are multiple realities, and the choices that you make throughout life or whatever, or just, in terms of Final Fantasy VII, things have reactions. Things change as events pass. For example, when Zack is making the decision, do I go to the reactor or do I save Cloud? He points, let's go this way, and drives the bike up this way. We see this rainbow thing come down the train line. And I think that's, that's alluding to, yes, this is another timeline. And we even see that a little bit as well when Cloud is floating to the live stream and Sephiroth is leading Cloud on and saying there are multiple events or whatever. I don't remember the exact words that he says, but it's, there's a lot happening here. And what makes this main timeline important? I still don't understand that. There's still a lot of stuff that's unknown with the Holy Materia. For a portion of the game, the Holy Materia, the white materia, was empty. And then after this date scene with Cloud, Aerith hands Cloud another one, which is white again. And I think what happens is the materia empties after memories fade. There's some stuff with the live stream and memories and materia in there, again, that I don't fully understand. So please, if you understand it more than I do, or you have a better grasp on it, please comment down below, and I would love to engage with you about that. But yeah, I think the thing that makes this timeline different is that Aerith slips Cloud another white materia, holy materia, but then it's foiled again because Aerith dies, and the holy materia, again, like the original Final Fantasy VII, falls into the water. And what's really strange is, because I know Cloud is battling a lot of stuff. For example, he doesn't even remember Zack until kind of midway through the game. So the game is very heavily playing towards that. And of course, we see Zack split through different timelines or whatever, split through the live stream to meet up with Cloud at the end, which is great. But a lot of it is very just, I don't know. I still want to say it's kind of up to interpretation. Maybe the devs are going to watch videos like this or whatever else and maybe see what people think to try and determine which direction they want to go in. The other thing that I think really drives home the point that things are not as they seem is in the original Final Fantasy VII, after Aerith is killed, we see that iconic scene of Cloud lowering Aerith's body in the water. We don't see that. We're robbed of that. And I think that's Cloud kind of suppressing that memory, she didn't actually die. I saved her. I saw it. I saw Sephiroth's sword hit the ground, no blood, no nothing. And I think we don't see that because Cloud suppresses that memory straight away and isn't with it. It's very obvious towards the end of the game, especially after the Aerith death sequence, that Cloud is not okay. That end CGI, I think he's the only one that sees Aerith there. Nobody else sees Aerith. Red 13 or Nanaki can kind of sense Aerith is there, but I don't know if it's a version of Aerith, like a Force Ghost Aerith, or maybe it's just Cloud's imagination running wild, like he's just going crazy. Maybe it's just some sort of imaginary Aerith. I don't know, but I think when I first played this game and I first finished it, I was very disappointed. I was like, super hyped up with Zack. I mean, like, oh, he's back, and then I kind of felt really deflated. I've had to sit on it and think about it for a couple of weeks to really just decide where I stand with it. And I don't think I loved the ending, but I think that was done on purpose. It's hard to beat the feeling that you have when you play the original game, when you don't have anything spoiled for you, and you see Aerith die. I think that's a very monumental moment in video game history. And of course, it's a one-of-one experience. You can only experience that once in your life, more or less. And we can't have that feeling again because, you know, most of the people, 90% of the people or more that are playing this game have already played the original one. So you don't have that emotional impact. Or you can't have that emotional impact, rather, of, you know, this. So what do the devs do? How do they twist it? They make you think you save Aerith, and then you don't. And then you don't actually see her die, but then she is alive, and then she isn't. So it's really hard to know what's happening with this game. And I think, again, that was done on purpose. So what's next for Final Fantasy VII in Part 3? You know, I would like a little bit more expanded on Zack. I want to see more Zack. I want more screen time for Zack. I want Zack to come back in the original party. I don't want him to just be an end boss thing. I want him to find his way back to the main timeline. But what would the purpose of that be? I don't know. It's I'm interested to hear your opinions and your thoughts on it. I mean, he even theorizes, you know, surely there's a way to come back to it, to transfer timelines or whatever, or find the party. I don't know. And again, the other confusing thing is, like, after we see Aerith die, we fight alongside Aerith as well, which adds to the confusion. I will kind of sprinkle in one last theory here. I think there is one, this isn't the right phrase for it, but like a godlike Aerith, there's one Aerith to rule them all. You know, there's different Aeriths and different timelines, but I think through the live stream, you know, different memories pass through and whatever. And I think there's one Aerith that's kind of aware of everything and trying to kind of like, if you guys have played Xenogears, it's kind of like breaking the chains of fate. You know, these things keep happening over and over and over again. Eventually, one day, these characters wake up and are like, I remember everything now. Let's go stop that major threat. I do think Cloud is going to take a really dark turn in the third game. I think, you know, seeing him with this black materia, put it into his Buster Sword, he doesn't look right. And I know a lot of that has to do with the CGI scenes and how the graphics look, you know, comparing character models to the pre-rendered scenes to the in-engine scenes. But he doesn't look right. He looks evil. And I think it would actually be really cool to have Cloud have like an evil arc or something like that in the third game. Maybe there's a point where Cloud is a boss and, you know, the rest of the party has to defeat him or something like that. I mean, he's going to fall into the live stream if it's going to echo what happens in Final Fantasy VII. He's going to find himself essentially and unlock his true self and find his memories. And of course, Tifa is going to be right there with him to help him do that. So I think it's really interesting what the devs have done. I don't want to say that the ending of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth kind of soured the game for me in its entirety, but to be honest, it kind of did. And this is kind of why I spaced out my thoughts by a couple of weeks, because I didn't want to immediately make a video and say, I didn't like this game because the ending soured it for me. I think it was an amazing game. There was some stuff that I didn't like. No, the ending didn't really leave me on a high, but I'm still wanting to see more, and I understand what they're going for now with a couple weeks removed from actually playing the ending and experiencing all of that as a whole. So there you have it. There's my thoughts on the game. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and comment down below. Let me know if you agree with anything that I've said, or maybe expand on some of the theories that I've had in the video as well. Hit the playlist to see some more videos, and we'll see you again on the next video soon. Bye-bye.